SURA.
Jim had made the copies last. You made them. You might have some more. You got these? You got more of these?
SURA is a ghost department, and we're trying to make sure we have the paperwork. I would like one as well. We have Councilor Driscoll, Councilor Green, Councilor Rudd, Councilor Bay, Councilor Allen. We have Stephanie Pasquale and Dave Del Vecchio.
She gonna make a copy of it.
Oh man, your bag is dangerous, man. I'm gonna strip over your bag.
All the things that we carry. Stephanie, do you want to jump in and give us a description? We've been asking SURA kind of things because there's people on SURA all over the place, and in a previous hearing we had the clerk sort of describe the original intent of having grant-funded community development type positions, being a place for them so they're temporary, and then how it's probably much larger than that at the moment. But anyways, go ahead, give us the intro to SURA.
Well, I was going to talk about just the Urban Renewal Agency overall, and
Sure.
Dave understands the payroll stuff sort of better than I do. So I'm the secretary of SURA. However, it's a non-voting position, so the commissioner is on that. And I just also wanted to state that the deputy mayor wishes she could be here today. She's out sick. So the Urban Renewal Agency, in terms of programs and functions, in the past it served sort of as a land bank before we had the land bank, and it acquired a lot of vacant land in particular. And currently it does still own some parcels, including what's commonly referred to as Perseverance Park, or New Urban Space, and that's one of the primary projects that the agency has been working on in terms of moving forward. It was very involved in the Price Right project and had amassed that land and sort of conveyed that to Jubilee Homes a few years ago. But basically, it does still own some vacant parcels, throughout the city. Not many. We've divested of most of those. Also owns a parking lot on Washington Street that I think is referred to as the Farmers Market parking lot. What's it called, Dave? That people would know.
It used to be the farmer's market.
It used to be the
Washington and Salina.
Washington, down the street a bit. The address is Washington and Salina, yeah, but it's down the street a bit, right? It's a paid parking lot. So, so this sort of SURA's activities on the project side right now. And Dave, if you don't mind, I'd like you to speak to how the payroll part works.
Yes, I mean, just to follow up with what Stephanie was saying, that's, in the agency, there's projects that are undertaken. There's 3 funds. We always talk about the revolving fund, which is payroll. But what she's referring to is there's the New York State Assistance Fund, and then there's a development fund. The development fund goes back years to an amnesty program during the Young administration. It was funded money for economic development. Some went to CITA, some went to urban renewal. So there's a fund that deals with those development projects. There's a separate fund deals with any grants that may be incurred through New York State, and it's called the New York State Assistance Fund. The third fund is the revolving fund, which is payroll. And we have I can't recall the exact amount, but a few years back, Common Council, the city loaned a sum of money to the Urban Renewal Agency to fund payroll. And it's a revolving fund in that every month, total payroll, total fringe benefit cost of all the individuals are billed back to the various departments. So if there's someone in finance that total salary fringe costs $1,000, that's paid by the Urban Renewal Agency. The Urban Renewal Agency sends a bill to the City Department of Finance to reimburse it. So if everything ended, the balance should become 0. That's why it's just revolving. So in addition to owning assets, it maintains its own set of books. There's a list of individuals that are on the agency payroll that are receiving W-2s from the agency. It's a separate federal ID number, separate legal entity, separate books and records. Does that help in terms of background?
My confusion, this is only for me. Where does the funds come from for SURA? Like, where does the money come from?
The original capital, the original loan Because on the city books, it's a payable, excuse me, on the city books, it's a receivable from SURA. On SURA's books, it's a payable. I think it's about 400,000. That was the original cash that was provided to the agency, to SURA, to meet payroll. And it revolves.
When was that?
What's that?
When was that?
Do you know?
Many years ago. I'll have to research that.
Like 81?
During the
like-
minor administration, we did increase that cash requirement. I believe it's approximately 400. I don't know why I think it's
But where
365.
does it come from, though?
The
Well,
city.
he's saying it gets
city.
reimbursed. He's saying
From where, though?
where?
Right.
Is what I'm
Well, what
asking.
happens is Urban Renewal has their own bank account, and that 400,000 is used initially was used to remit payroll, and when the departments reimburse the agency, it's used to fund subsequent payroll. And the way the cash balance is maintained is we delay reimbursement to the city for health insurance and a few other items. So that's how we balance the payroll, so to speak, balance the
Delay
payments.
reimbursement to the city.
Delay reimbursement, that's how we have enough cash.
The city give, but then the city.
Think about, I guess, let me try to explain it this way. If you took the gross payroll, and I don't have those numbers in front of me, but if you took the biweekly payroll, we would not have sufficient cash to meet payroll if we did not delay reimbursement back to the city for certain costs of fringe benefits. Because the goal is to meet payroll. If we only have 400,000 and payroll every month is 400,000, and yet there's a monthly reimbursement, there's never enough
Like a
cash.
rolling fund, and you have your 400,000, and you pay out payroll, and then you bill the departments, and the departments give you money, and the department's money probably comes from different sources too, including the general, like the. from
What's the
general
415,
fund.
right, what we've been talking
Right.
about here. Yeah.
But it feels like, I don't have a great thing, but it definitely feels the opposite of transparency. It's like, oh, look here. You just can't tell. It's like a giant sheet, and it covers more than it should cover. And because there's all these positions that, well, just from a budgeting transparency, it's like a giant sheet. There may be an actual reason that gives some kind of flexibility to government to hire and fire, but
Do you mind if I just speak
Yes.
to, I know that, this comes up every year, and so we have been making a concerted effort to reduce the number of individuals on the SURA payroll and get them into either the civil service counterparts. So for example, I know in code enforcement, we've reduced, for next year's budget, there'll be 9 less people on your sheet for next year, because they moved over to civil service. And so according to the full-time calculations I did yesterday, it looks like there's about 66 people on the payroll, but we expect that to be 56 starting for the July 1 year. So we were able to just continue to work with the county to get people transitioned to civil service and to figure out how to keep moving those along. And, I think that is a goal every year for us to make those, make that transition over as we can with those positions that are able to be transitioned. I don't know if that's helpful.
I could be wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if the question of where the money comes from was satisfied. And so maybe it's a matter of further clarifying the question.
All comes from the city. It's
all
all
coming
the
from the
city.
general fund.
It comes from, remember, the 400,000 initially came from the general fund. Right, it's all general fund. The reimbursements from the departments come from the departmental budget. So
So
that's
is
all
it-
general fund. Water fund, if there's someone from water.
So I'm looking right here, so on this line it says, less reimbursement from other funds. So in this case, for example, would it look like this?
That would be, no,
Okay.
that's a side of reimbursement.
Okay,
To the bureau. The bureau, that's that particular reimbursement side. What it appears, if you go to page, let me use the Bureau of, any one of the professional. You remember earlier in the morning, On page 99, let's pick on the Treasury. They're not here, so I can pick on them. 541, 500, professional services.
Yep.
There was a supervisor position that's paid on urban renewal. It's in that number, 144,040,
Okay.
and fiscal year 20. That person, that individual, those expenses are charged against that line. So when the urban renewal agency sends the bill to the Treasury for X number of dollars, it's expensed against that budget line. A check is cut and sent to the Syracuse Urban Renewal Agency, and the agency deposits that cash, and that's how the money keeps revolving. But it is all general fund
Okay.
money. Right.
Do you mind? And I will, you may have been getting at, there's also obviously positions, particularly in neighborhood and business development, that are also funded by the federal block grants and other state grants that we are all constantly trying to acquire. In addition, there is a SIDA administrative allocation that pays for some portions of people's staff. Though there's a lot of, that bill that we get isn't just for the 415.
Well, and I guess that's a good
Is it
point.
a
It's not all, in purposes, the departments that you see represented here outside of NBD is all general fund money, unless somebody's from water. But NBD is primarily the block grant and home grant, wherever you're charging individuals. But so primarily the departments I believe you're discussing outside of NBD is all general fund, whether it be finance, I think the mayor's office, any department listed there other than NBD. Right.
Thanks for the clarification.
Sure. Yeah.
You described the ever shrinking nature of SURA and how we're getting better every year, but it's always there. And going from 66 to 56. So I understand there's actually a real justification for some of the positions. Do we have any sense of like what number of the 56 that will still be on the payroll as of July 1st are? What if we really did all the work with the civil service titles and all that and it all worked out, do we have an idea how small SURA could be?
Outside of NBD, again, I go back to what I said earlier. If we have individuals right now that are on SURA payroll, and I'll pick on the accountant position in my office, in the finance department, you just can't transition where I could say, you can't go to the county and say, we'd like this person to become civil service. You have to create a job. If the title doesn't exist, you need to write new position duty statements. The county needs to approve that. If the title exists, such as an accountant one, you'll be mandated to follow the civil service list. So effectively, this person could be laid off, and that's an issue to be considered. In this particular case, if it's an account position, it's vital. We're having turnover, we have retirements. So that would be a concern, but that's how it would work. You'd be required to create the title and in the civil service classification, get the county's permission, and then there'll be a test. So if the title don't exist, it's my understanding if they meet the qualifications, the county will allow the city to appoint the person, but he or she then would need to take a test.
So just to use an example, the I-team was originally funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies, so that would make sense to be positions that should be on SURA. They're grant funded, they're
Right.
maybe temporary. Then the grant funding phases away, so now there's no more grant funding for the I-team. The I-team becomes this Office of Accountability and Performance, or whatever it is.
Right.
And so now it's city funded, and they're still on SURA, and I would imagine there probably isn't a director of innovation civil service position at the county right now.
You said they're still SURA employees?
Well,
Yeah, they're on the
I think
list.
they both.
If they're on SURA, then, okay, if they're still on SURA, I mean, you're funding it from the city, but you're funding it through the 415 line or the professional services line. They're not on the salary line of the city. So they're still part of that revolving fund. So the county would not be involved in those
No,
jobs.
no, I'm not saying the county's involved. I'm saying that if you wanted to move them off, you would need to put them into a civil service title
Right,
within an
correct.
office. And I'm saying the director of innovation probably is not on a pre-existing civil service line, so you probably have to,
Right.
Right,
this is
correct.
the dilemma we're speaking of.
Right,
Um,
right.
So she wouldn't have a job.
So like, would those positions be counted in ones that should be transitioned away from, or are those positions that we think of as appropriate even though they're no longer grant funded?
I don't know if we can answer that. That's really more of an administrative question for the administration. I mean,
It's a question for who?
well, I believe for the mayor's office. I mean, I can't say X number of positions should be here, or should not be here. It's
That's
really
fair.
not
I
my
like Dave.
decision.
I'm not trying to get you in trouble.
We'll say it.
Other questions related to Sarah? Councilor Green?
What are we gonna do with Perseverance Park?
So we have a design plan. We've been working with the Connective Corridor, actually paid for the design services. And part of the design had a bunch of benches and all kinds of things that the Connective Corridor has agreed to purchase for the park. So there is a design I'd be happy to share with you that's going out to bid, and we're hoping that the bids come in within the allocation that we have available. I think we have $300,000 that's been allocated for several years as the SURA investment towards the park. And until the bids come back, we're not really sure how feasible that will be, but I'd be happy to share the current designs, and if they have to be value engineered after the bids come in, we can certainly share that as well.
So, there was a proposal before, and I believe Kate Atwater was involved, and we were showed some renderings. And I'm assuming because that wasn't brought up anymore, that project went away?
Unfortunately, if you recall, there were a few elements to that design that had the total estimated cost in the millions of dollars, and it just didn't seem financially feasible to pursue that path. So Syracuse University, we were running into that time crunch where the Connective Corridor dollars would go away. So they had offered to help pay for a more scaled down version of the park, but to make it much more engaging, inviting, and usable space with the limited funds they have available that did have to get spent this year. So the project got, I guess, reimagined at a more affordable rate, and the design firm that had worked on that previous project, their engagement was sort of over, and we're using a local landscape architecture firm, Maxine and Horst, has been providing those designs.
I have an idea for the usable space. We should do putt-putt golf there. Can you write that down? Because then we can charge. It's something that everybody can do, families, older people, younger people, and it's right there on Salina Street. Okay?
Great lunch break activity.
Yeah.
Right. On your lunch break, you can go putt-putt golf. On the weekends, you can do it. There you go.
Very jealous of City Park in New Orleans. 18-hole putt-putt right in the middle of the park.
How come we didn't see that?
Right.
Right,
I think
right.
we rolled past the park.
We was in the park.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just didn't go.
It's called City Park?
City Park.
Yeah.
Make it happen, Stephanie.
How many other properties does
So,
SURA have?
I believe it's 19, but I'd be happy to get the list to you.
So kind of like the employees, is the 19, should it be phased out over time? Like, should you give them to somebody else or sell them, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
over the years, we've worked to divest. I think because SURA was, and again, that's unfortunate, it was before my time, was more of a de facto land bank, that it had some, I don't want to use the term random, but seemingly random vacant lots. That over the years we've worked towards, a lot of them were residential, small, non-buildable lots, so we've worked to divest of those. over the years, and I'd be happy to get you the current list. There are some of these larger, like these downtown parcels, and there's 2 parcels on Washington Street near closer to Erie Boulevard that are up. I guess it would be east of here, that are like a basketball court that SURA owns. But if you take those sort of 5, the downtown and those other lots out, I think there's about 14 vacant lots that are scattered throughout the urban renewal area. So those sort of parallels the neighborhood revitalization strategy area of the NRSA. Those 2 sort of the urban renewal area and the NRSAs are the same now. So those lots are located in those areas other than the downtown lots.
And when the city talks about asset sales, have the 19 properties that SURA controls been in those discussions at all? How would that work?
Do you want to speak to that? No, absolutely. We've looked at, and we're trying to get good or better at this RFP process, to let folks know very publicly that these are available, and please bid. So the first step, as we went through the process to get qualified bidders, and then we do open it up. I think I won't lie, we need to get better at it. It's very hard, and I think
You're saying we right now, you mean the city of Syracuse?
the city of Syracuse, we wanted if we thought if we had this wonderful template, this process, we could just bring it to SURA for, hey, we have these 2, a basketball court and a basketball court area on Washington Street, on East Washington. Wouldn't it be great if we put these into more productive use? I don't think they get a ton of use right now, even though they're not officially parks, but they look, if you drove by, you'd think you would think it's a city park. And I think we just need to get better at it. The last, the RFP process was, I think we need to just reduce some barriers to getting people excited about and interested in submitting proposals to build on spaces like that. So we had our first shot. The city had RFP'd the Paulson site. We only got 1 response. We clearly need to do something different and better. And we got really great feedback through that process in order to streamline that.
So none of the properties that were RFP'd for the asset sale were SURA properties, right? Those were other categories of city property?
Correct. They were on that list. I don't know if you came to our event last year. They were on the list to generate some excitement. Yeah.
Okay.
Just wanted to maybe state, I believe SURA is what happened to the 15th Ward. It was kind of the catcher's mitt for properties taken via eminent domain during the building of Route 81, correct? Yes.
It's believable.
I
But
was just stating it for all the listeners.
how old is SURA? It's
Okay.
that old.
It's that old.
It's that old.
It's just hung around ever since. More questions?
Other questions on SURA? No? Okay. We're